let's hop in. Let's get in there. It's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out for the program today.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to be doing this and thank you for having me.
Me too, absolutely. So let's begin with this. I always begin with this question because I don't know that we've covered it enough in our
Mhm.
dialogue as humans, but 6 years ago, this pandemic changed everything for all of us.
For sure.
How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you approach business and life today?
It was very funny. Goodness, last September, one of my close friends came out. I live in New York, and so one of my close friends came out from New York City out to Long Island, where I am. Um, and we made this fabulous picnic lunch, and we took it to the beach that is, 10 minutes from my house, walking, right? I mean, it's beautiful. We sat in with our feet in the water. I had just had surgery, so I couldn't go in the water, but we sat in our chairs with my feet in the water, and we just hung out and had our picnic, and it was fabulous. And I was telling her, I said, this beach we came to probably 5 or 6 times a week during the pandemic. And she said, the problem with the pandemic is we didn't know how to enjoy the parts of it that were so fabulous
Yeah.
because we were so anxious
Yep.
about the horrors that were happening.
Hmm.
But that there was an enormous amount of readjustment to our expectations for ourselves during that period that were so powerful. And I think for me, that is what I want to take away from that period,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Is don't get me wrong, I took away the anxiety. I got that. I'm good and go. I'm good with that, right? Um, but there was a different level of value you put on friendships, on a different understanding of family, a different understanding of how we wanted to feel fulfilled. Um, and that period sort of, again, we can just revel in the horrors that we were living through, or we can look at that and say, okay, this was the giant frying pan hitting us over the head of we get to choose who we want to be and what we want to do. And that's what I took. Yeah.
And I think that's the way life works. We need this recalibration to figure out what's essential, what's important. It's kind of that post 9/11 thing. We were hoping
Yeah.
that there would be levels of humanity that would have been permanent, but unfortunately, we just start slipping into old habits. I know I moved in January of that year, and I was in a new neighborhood, and everybody was walking during the pandemic and out and about.
Yeah.
Now I can't find anybody. It's like apocalyptic. Like no one's walk. I mean, there's people, you
Hmm.
got your stalwarts, but for the most part, it's weird that everything just reverts back. We've just turned into a society of, going inside and it's all electronic. There's just so many levels of like humanity that I wish would have stayed after that because there was a lot of good things, like you said. And that's such a good point. That's why I love asking this question because there's always these refreshing things. Let's think but it's hard to be in that moment while you're living it and be
Yeah.
in that existential moment and say, we're going to glean everything good because it was frightening. No one knew when it was going to get out.
That's
And
right.
then when we would get out, there would be a variant and it would be worse than before. So there
That's
was
right.
there was no level of us to just kind of lean back and be like, all right, we got 2 months to hang out. No one knew anything, you know?
Right. No, no. And it's I often forget how long it was.
Yeah.
I will often say, oh, 2020, and then I'm reminded, no, it was 2020 and 2021, and it was, this went on, and I sort of I forget how very, very long it was that we were living in this constant state of dread,
Yeah.
um, and uncertainty. And I think um, and I was lucky enough to be not directly touched by loss. I was indirectly touched by loss during it, but that was um, that I we had my son's bar mitzvah was in November of 2021, and that was the first time that my family came together and that we had seen each other in over a year and a half.
Yeah. That's wild.
And that was it was truly wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's get into the good work that you're doing right now. I'm going to put you in front of 13-year-olds. You're at career day. One of the kids in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living? How do you synthesize your day job to make sense to their brains?"
So, I often get teased because nobody understands what I do for a living. But the way that I would explain it is that um, that nonprofits out in the right, every nonprofit is just a business, right? It has a different tax status, but it's a business. Um, it is a mission focused, mission based business. And so their work on a day-to-day basis is constantly making sure that they are meeting their mission and that they are providing whatever it is to save the world that they are trying to save. What happens all the time is that all the stuff in their back office that has to exist and function really well um, and and do the do's to make them flourish on meeting their mission have to be met. And what I do is everything in the back office. And so the Benson agency was founded to be a capacity builder so that you can achieve your mission faster, bigger, greater than ever before by letting professionals who can do the fundraising, the marketing and the communications, the operations, the human resources, the building all of those systems for you. Let us come in and do that because we don't know how to make your mission a reality, but we know how to make your office a reality.
I love that. I worked in nonprofit for a while. I worked for the United
Mhm.
Way, and then I
Okay.
was kind of a springboard to the YMCA, and I ran a couple computer labs. And I
Oh,
just am not a fundraiser guy. It's just not in my bones.
right.
But running that program that we were running, that was our
Mhm.
thing. That's what we, so it's good to have that outside
Yeah.
influence come in and take care of that. So what did you want to be at that age? What was your dream gig at 13?
I wanted to be a lawyer and an actress.
Okay, that's real right and left brain. That's a
Yeah, but I knew exactly what I wanted, and my older sister said, "You can't do both, you have to choose."
okay.
So I know exactly what I wanted because I remember the conversation where my dreams got dashed.
Oh no.
Um, so I was going to be a lawyer.
So take me back to your roots. Are you from Long Island
No, I'm
originally?
from Florida.
Okay,
Mhm.
so you're from Florida. So what were the foundational elements, the building blocks that made you either want to get into law or acting? How, and what were the elements that have led you to find your voice professionally today?
Um, so I'm not in law or acting
Right.
today. I believe that there are seasons in everybody's life, and thank God I'm not the same person I was when I was 13, 23, or 33, or 43 for that matter. Um, so what really for me, I went to college, I studied political communication. I wanted to work in the political arena and go to law school. Um, and I went for my very first interview. And in that interview, the person interviewing me gave me a massage in the interview. And I was 21 years old. And I said, I'm not going to go into a field where that is expected and normalized. And I walked out of that interview and I left politics.
Wow.
Um, and I loved to travel. And so I got a master's in business with a focus on travel and the tourism industry. And I worked in that for the next 15 years. And it was, like if you love working in hotels, it's in your soul. I loved working in hotels. I loved working in tour operation. Like that is in my soul. Um, but I had children and two things cannot be true. You cannot be in you. I think what Einstein said, you can't be in two places at once, or two things cannot be right. It
Yeah.
is true that you cannot meet your child's bus and be at work at the same time.
Yeah.
Those two things cannot exist simultaneously. And I needed to get out of a 24/7 business so that I could be a 24/7 mother. And I opened my consulting firm at that point, and that was 15 years ago. I deliberately kept it small. I wanted it to be in a place that met my needs in that moment. Um, but I thought I was going to be consulting in tourism. I have a master's degree in it. I've a decade and a half of experience in it. Obviously, that's what I should be doing. My first two clients were organizations that were certainly in tourism, but were also nonprofits. And I fell in love with the nonprofit side. And I said, oh, I know what I want to do. And I went about learning the details so that I could re-energize and refocus. And so I went on a path I never saw coming in my life in that moment. And I have not looked back. And I've been doing this now for 15 years.
So when you look back on that political bullet,
Mhm.
so to speak, that
Yeah.
grazed past you, it's probably
Mhm.
no surprise that this train wreck of what's happening right now is
Mhm.
unfolding and manifesting in its very grotesque way.
Um, you know, um, I will say this, that whenever anybody says, I don't know if you have to remember when it came out that Donald Trump said, grab him by the you know what.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah.
I said anybody who claims that is because of the party is wrong
Right.
because I was not in the Republican Party. I was on the Democratic side when this happened and am
Yeah.
still a Democrat to this
Uh-huh.
day. It is not a party issue. It is an industry issue. And it is beyond it being an industry issue, it is an issue that lays dormant in our global society and in our American society that women are still a commodity
Hmm.
and women are still um, treated that way in professional settings. That is a reality. And until we want to address that, acknowledge that, and fix that, it is going to continue. And we are going to continue to lose smart women who could be doing great work because they value themselves too much to put themselves in that position.
I mean, even with the rescinding of all of these healthcare rights that women have, and it's not
Mhm.
even abortion is the thing that everybody focuses on, but it's general OBGYN things that are just eroded
Yeah.
away, especially in the poorest places down south and other places. And the thing that just absolutely shocks me, I
Mhm.
was telling someone the other day, when we look at the midterms right now with what's going on, if every single woman paid attention to exactly what's going on and would just vote, just that, just women.
Mhm.
Wow.
We're done.
That's it. Bye. Thank you for
Yep.
playing. But it's like those things, even in this election cycle that we just went through, that brought this thing that's happening now, that would have been enough for a sea change. So I just think there's a level of, and probably coming from that law political part of you that wanted to be in that
Mhm.
world, there is such a light that's just been turned off for so many people, you know,
Yeah,
just a disconnect.
in 2016, I did get activated in politics again. I ran for local office because they said that's the thing that women can do right now is you can
Mhm.
run for local office. So I did. Um, and I said it right after the election. I was behind in all of my taking care of my house responsibilities, and so I was out, middle of November, finally raking the leaves. And of course, there's an actual windstorm that day. And I said, I am literally raking leaves in a windstorm. Message received. um, and I said, noted, 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 heard you, got it,
Uh-huh.
right? It is, we are in a moment. I feel like I'm armchair quarterbacking this, but I will say that we are in a moment in history that is not, could anybody who was watching could have foretold it.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And I'm not talking about if you were looking from the past 12 years or 10 years at this point. I'm talking about if you were looking for the last uh, century
Yeah.
of time,
Yeah.
if not longer. We have not addressed the endemic issues that exist in our country and that other countries similarly have, and the rise of authoritarian behaviors, peak and valley, over and over throughout the world. And anybody watching this with a historic lens, with somebody um, who really can look at the nuances of it, you can see this coming. Um, and we have just simply chosen not to acknowledge it
Hmm.
because we could avoid the conversation.
Yeah.
And just like with climate change, if we don't, just by not acknowledging it doesn't mean that we're not experiencing it. Um, just like with authoritarian behaviors,
Yeah.
right? Same
Yep.
thing. Just because we are in a moment where we can close our eyes to it, right, does not mean that it is not a problem. And we are suffering through that right now. We could have passed legislation
Oh yeah.
in the 70s as soon as Roe v. Wade was passed.
Hmm.
Congress could have said, let's institutionalize this. Let's make sure this can't be taken. We sat back on our laurels and
Yeah.
thought we were safe,
Yeah. Absolutely.
right?
Yeah. So I want to dig into where you are today and who's been that inspirational force in your life that's allowed you to dream, to get to this place, to navigate and find the nonprofit world and where you are right now as a professional. Who's been that hero for you?
I was incredibly blessed when I decided to sort of jumpstart my life again. Um, this was 2.5 years ago. I made the decision. I had one child who was going to college. I had another child who was going into high school. I knew I had 4 years until I was going to empty nest, until I was going to have the chance to literally do anything I wanted, right? For the first time in decades and decades, right? I couldn't blame any decisions on anybody else from this point forward, right? And so I went to the organization that I was working at the time, and I said, I'm going to leave, and I'm going to, and I don't know what I want to do. But I was in the C-suite, so I said, I'm going to give you 6 months notice so you can figure out what you're doing, and I'm going to use that time to interview women who um, I respect are doing something right. And I spent 6 months interviewing easily somewhere around 60 or 70 women that I thought they were all doing some piece of it right, professionally, personally, family, whatever it was. And I asked them what they were doing and how they were doing it and how they made those choices and um, and I have been able to design this era of my life based off of their genius and their life's experiences. And I'm so grateful that I took the time to do that because when you ask me who inspired me, um, I think I think I have a um, I have a grandmother who um, divorced at a very young age, in a time when divorce was not something that you did, raised her children, remarried an amazing person who loved my father and his brother deeply. Um, my grandmother was a business owner in a time women were not business owners, without a fraction of the education that we now have access to. Um, right. She did all of these things, and I think that's an amazing story, right? And I could just say, oh, my grandmother was my inspiration, right?
Right.
Because her life has went through so many things that I've experienced in mine, and I've wanted to replicate so much of that, and that would be a lie because she is certainly a force in my life. But these women that I interviewed changed my life.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
speaking of interviewing people, if you could meet
Mhm.
one person alive right now that you find absolutely fascinating, that you could spend time with and pick their brain that might help you on your not only your professional but your whole journey in life, who would you
Mhm.
love to meet and talk to?
Oh, that's so interesting. I have all these women who I go, oh, we would be friends. They
Yeah.
should they should get to know me.
Yeah.
We would be such good friends. Um, I would love to meet Billy Porter right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And so Billy, if you happen to come across this podcast, please reach out. Joe has my email.
Yes.
Like, but here's why is that recently I was in the city in New York City and I was driving and Billy was walking out of the show that they're doing and into a black car picking them up, looking fabulous. And I said, God, I remember seeing them in um, their in Kinky Boots, which was their big breakout role. And um, and the person I was sitting next to said to me, yes, but do you know that they could barely make ends meet, right? And they had somebody who believed in them
Mhm.
that helped them survive during that period and was telling me about this. And I think a lot of us have somebody who believes in us, but being able to hear that, feel that, have faith in that, be vulnerable enough to accept that, that's really hard for me. Um, and I would love to learn from Billy they how they could accept that belief in themselves from somebody else and internalize it and turn into who they have been able to flourish in this career that they've built and use their voice for such powerful reasons. But I think that's something that I would love. So Billy, if you're around,
Yeah, it's in the universe. You know, it's
Billy.
interesting. I know that feeling. I know what you're talking about. Who did that for you? Who was the one that saw you, saw beneath it all, and knew that you had this?
Oh, that's an interesting question. You know, recently, so one of the things that I do, I have we have a second company called Women Who Change the World. And Women Who Change the World works with women in states of transition to build a plan. And we do this, we actually use the methodology that you would use in strategic planning to build out systems and plans for you to think about what you want to transition to next. And as part of this, I write about it. And I wrote my own personal SWOT analysis, which is my strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And um, I was shared them publicly in my writing for the first time ever. And let me tell you, when you are really honest and you really talk about what those are, and you really acknowledge them, that's very, very, very vulnerable place to be.
Yeah.
But I did it, and then I published it. And my dad read it, right? I was like, oh my goodness, right? My dad read this. and, and he wrote back to me, "You are amazing."
Wow.
Um, and I'll cry saying it because I never knew how to feel that
Yeah.
from others. Um, and my parents raised us to have faith in ourselves and be independent and go for it and be successful. And I mean, my parents really are exceptional parents. But I had never been, and I'm sure it was said, I had never been able to hear that sentence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and and it was I can't even tell you what it meant.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Every day you wake up and do this work that helps change lives. When you're in the nonprofit world, you're not just going into a job and coming home. You're doing things that are going to radiate like a ripple in a pond in a big way. What is that energy every day for you? Not only to do that work at a high level, but you have a soul, you have a family, you have all these other things that are a part of your universe. When that alarm clock does or doesn't go off, what's that energy every day for you to do this at a high level?
Oh, I love what I do. Let me just make that statement. Period. End of sentence. Um, but beyond the fact that I love what I do, I think that um, there are there are moments in our lives where we choose what we are going to do. Many of us fall into what we are going to do, but there are a few moments in our lives where we get to choose what that looks like. And um, and this was a choice I made to do this work. Um, Consulting can be very, very, very profitable, and you can make quite a bit of money in the consulting arena. Um, I'm choosing to make less so that I can work in the nonprofit world, right? And I work specifically with small and medium-sized nonprofits because they don't have access to this type of work. I, the Benson agency um, keeps our rates low enough that a small and a medium-sized nonprofit has access to this level of game-changing service that they would not otherwise have access to. We are often half the price of what another agency would charge. And that is very deliberate. Um, if I could change the world, nonprofits would pay what for-profits pay um, to their employees, to everybody, and that we would fund nonprofits in a way that they could accomplish their mission and afford to pay their staff what they should be getting paid. That is not a reality. And so until that is a reality, we need to make sure that they have what they need to succeed because our systems throughout the country are built around the fact that there are these nonprofit organizations that sort of carry the water.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that in local communities and across in up to national level orgs, that across the board they have what they need to succeed.
So let me ask you this. If you ran into that young version of you that either wanted to be in the courtroom or on stage,
Mhm.
and you walked into the room and there was a film projector and you clicked play and it was the life that you've lived, a 60-second highlight reel, would that young version of you believe that your life turned out this way?
Yeah, they would. They
Okay.
absolutely would. They probably would have thought I would have had another kid or two. They probably, I always, being a mom is the most important thing to me, and I wanted a big family. Um, they probably would, they sure as heck wouldn't believe that I lived in New York. I'll tell you that. Um, but I have been incredibly blessed in my life to be able um, to make a lot of the dreams come true that I had and that I wanted to have. Um, and I think they would probably go, "Oh, I know her. She's got something else coming too." Like, I'm pretty excited to see what she does next.
So let's get to the true intersection of your soul here. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you in different capacities, but you run the show. What's your
Mhm.
perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, Somebody recently said to me that they just figured out that everybody's just pretending to be a grown up. And I thought, yeah.
That's it.
Right?
Yep.
How many times I keep seeing, I think it's your son who is walking in sometimes into this, and it's okay, but I
Yeah.
love that. I actually really love that. Particularly, I love that when a father is being interrupted at work because moms are so often interrupted at work.
Right.
So, um, I, I just think to myself, um, that by being authentic, by being who we are, by acknowledging that there is many things happening at once, we are giving permission to others to have many things happening at once.
Hmm.
Um, my LinkedIn profile says multiple hat wearer. I am a multiple hat wearer. Um, I I think that um, I'm I think that if anything, the person who I am is the person who I am.
Yeah.
That's important to me. And so the people who I have the privilege to work with, the organizations that we serve, my friends, my colleagues, my family, my children, um, I don't think I'm that different between those
Yeah.
relationships. Um, I don't know that that's necessarily a positive all the time, but I don't think I'm different between them. Um, and I think that I have no interest in pretending to be something I'm not.
Yeah.
Um, you asked about COVID. My son would climb up on my lap during COVID. Often I would be in meetings and he would climb up there. And I thought I would think to myself if he needed that, right?
Yeah.
Um, he was struggling with some mental illness at the time and he needed that. And um and I and I think that I could either I could pretend that there was a piece of me that didn't exist when I was in a meeting, or I could acknowledge that this was real in my life.
Yep.
And what I learned was that by acknowledging it was real in my life, I found out it was real in other people's lives,
Hmm.
and we were able to relate, and I did better business because of it.
Absolutely. I totally get that. So
Mhm.
let's go out on a high note here. Let's get you into a time machine and you
Okay.
can go back in time and see one political event. It could be a rally, it could be a moment, it could be anything in our pantheon of American political history, and you could go back and see it with your own eyes. Where are you going? I've never asked this, and I have an answer too.
I want to know your answer.
I would be in the park when Obama the first time said yes, I'm the new president of the United States. I would want to be in that crowd so badly to feel that energy. That
Mhm.
would have been unreal to feel that we all
That
came
moment.
together for something that monumental.
That moment. I remember holding my son, who was a newborn. My son was born on December 2nd. So he was a newborn. And I remember holding him in my arms in the rocking chair that I had, watching the inauguration and saying,
Wow.
whispering in his ear, "You're watching this. You don't remember it, but you're watching this. Don't forget this. Don't forget this. Don't forget this." Um, I, I, um, for me, um, I would have loved to be in, not in the big room. I don't want to be in the big room. I would have loved to be in the room when Hillary Clinton lost.
Wow.
Um,
Deep.
because um, she was, for me in my generation, somebody who um, went for it repeatedly, right? Repeatedly in her life, she went for it. Um, and and in that moment of loss, I would imagine she learned something so valuable that I wish I would have been there to see
Yeah.
it. When she first got married, I just recently learned this, that when she first got married, she was earning more money than Bill Clinton. She was
Uh-huh.
in law, he was an attorney general,
Uh-huh.
right? So she was the breadwinner in this
Yep.
family. And she could not get a credit card in her name
Wow.
because it was not legal for women to carry their own credit at that point.
Wow.
Um, and this was only a couple of years before I was born. And I just think to myself, right, to be a woman who um who laid it bare and said, it is worth it to me to take this giant risk and continue to lay those paths. Um, Kamala would not have been chosen as the vice president.
Right.
She would not have been tapped to run for president when we needed her to.
Uh-huh.
Um, you know, had people years before not laid those groundwork, right? When, if women do not carry diaper bags into the halls of Congress, um, and nurse their babies while on the floor of Congress, we are never going to value the fact that we have uteruses and brains.
Yep.
And
Totally.
she called us out on that.
Yeah.
And she created that. So I would love to have been there when she lost, and to be able to have a moment of the learning with her, but also for her to know that what she did changed us.
Absolutely. That's deep. So so if anybody wants to get involved with the Benson Agency, they want to find out more about what you're doing, reach out. Any of the good work that's going on, where do they go? How do they do it?
www.thebensonagency.com
Okay.
is the easiest way, and I would love for you to do that.
Excellent. I will put those links in the show notes. This has been absolutely wonderful. Cindy, great to meet you. Thank you so much for your fire, your passion, your story. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Most
Yes.
appreciated. Have a great one.